I am a lazy animator, so let's just be honest. Learning body mechanics is absolutely overwhelming. So today, I want to share with you a simple system I had to learn in order to improve my body mechanics. Let me explain. First of all, I want to start off by saying if you're trying to learn body mechanics and you're an animation baby, you're trying to run before you've even learned to walk. And sadly, that is a lesson I had to learn on my own. Because when I first started studying animation, I thought body mechanics meant learning how to animate cool things like fight scenes or parkour. But I eventually realized that body mechanics is actually the solution to a much larger equation. And before you can solve that equation, you have to understand the smaller pieces that create movement, like weight, balance, timing, force, and momentum. Now let me ask you a question. Do your characters feel floaty? Do your movements feel stiff? Do your actions feel like somebody is sliding a puppet across the screen? Well, here's a tip I want to start with. In order to create believable movement, you must first build a strong foundation. And for me, the most important thing isn't the arms or the legs, or even the head. The most important thing is the center of gravity, because everything starts there. When a character pushes something heavy, their center of gravity shifts. When they jump, their weight changes. When they run, their body is constantly fighting to regain balance. Everything revolves around weight. But I'm sure one of those questions you're asking is, do we study sports? Do we use reference footage? How about slow motion videos? What about frame by frame analysis? And before I answer that, let me ask you another question, because apparently I like asking questions. What's the best tool in a toolbox? Is it a hammer? A wrench? Maybe a screwdriver? The problem I had as a beginner was believing there was only one way to study animation. I thought there was a secret exercise, one workflow, one magical tutorial. But I eventually learned there isn't one perfect solution. There's only the best solution for a specific problem. If I want to understand weight, I study athletes lifting heavy objects. If I want to understand balance, I study people walking or running. If I want to understand force, I study jumping, throwing, or pushing and pulling movements. Different problems need different references. Now, before we start talking about arms and legs, I need to share the one thing that completely changed my animation. Of course, every body part matters. But what mattered even more to me was realizing that movement isn't separate pieces. Everything affects everything else. Move the arm and the shoulder reacts. Move the shoulder and the torso shifts. Move the legs and suddenly the hips compensate. Everything is connected. And the exercise that actually unlocked that for me was gesture. Not gesture drawing, but gesture movement. Watching movement and asking, where does the energy begin? Where does it travel to, and where does it end? Because if you can understand movement as energy moving through a series of connected actions, suddenly body mechanics starts making sense. Let's use a walk cycle as an example. Most beginner animators think a walk is just a character taking a step on repeat, but in reality, it's a little more than that. To truly gesture a walk, I like to think of it as energy transferring through the body. The foot pushes the body forward and slightly off balance. Gravity then pulls the body downwards. The opposite leg catches the energy and redirects it back upwards and forwards. Then the process repeats, back and forth. And suddenly, a walk isn't just moving feet anymore. It's controlled falling. I could go much deeper into walk cycles in another video. Say walk in the comments if that interests you. Now let's talk about limbs. When I first started, arms and legs drove me insane, especially when trying to make movement feel natural. One thing that shortcut my learning process was stopping myself from obsessing over details. Instead of focusing on muscles and other details, I started thinking of arms and legs as simple lines. Because once I could understand where things moved and why they moved, I could layer details on top later. And finally, hands and feet. Hands and feet still bully me to this exact day. But I approach them pretty much the exact same way. I keep it simple, because body mechanics isn't really about details. It's about understanding movement. If movement feels believable, the details can be forgiven. But if movement feels wrong, people notice immediately. And if you want to know how I actually break down reference footage to study body mechanics faster, comment reference below, and I'll break down exactly how I study reference footage to improve body mechanics in less than 4 minutes.